Chapter 790. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the unconscious woman with a serious expression and said in a low voice, "She's badly injured." "You don't have to tell me that, I can tell." Yu Qianqiu squatted down next to him and winked at him. "Old monster, tell me, who is she? Was she an old flame of yours?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked over and stared at him, who was smiling mischievously. He sneered. "Who is she? Haven't you guessed it yet? She was once one of the 12 great immortal lords in the celestial world." "Ah." Yu Qianqiu's eyes were slightly confused, and then his smile froze. He seemed to have thought of something, and his mouth twitched. He pointed at the unconscious woman and asked weakly, You mean, she's Ji Wu?" Immortal Lord Crocodile sat there motionlessly and sneered. "If she's not her, then who do you think she is?" Yu Qianqiu's outstretched hand jerked back as if he had been electrocuted. He said with a stiff expression, "Old monster, don't joke with me. How could she be Ji Wu? With immortal Lord Ji Wu's strength, who in the East Holy Land would dare to touch her?" He felt a chill down his spine when he thought of how he had just pinched and slapped this woman's butt. "If I'm not wrong." Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back at the woman on the ground and sighed. "This might have happened because of your master. She was probably severely injured by your master first, and then she fell into their trap. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to touch her so easily. She's really Ji Wu." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His gaze lingered on the unconscious woman's pretty face. Even though there were bloodstains on her face and she looked haggard, it couldn't hide her cold and aloof temperament. She was clearly someone who had been above others for a long time. Her messy hair was resting on the ground, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. There was a hint of anger between her smooth, white brows. Damn it. This woman was clearly not someone to be trifled with. She was still holding a grudge even when she was unconscious. A ruthless expression gradually appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. His eyes flickered as he stood up and slowly walked towards the unconscious Ji Wu. His every move fell into Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, what are you trying to do?" "Nothing." Yu Qianqiu's gaze was deep and indifferent as he said, "While she's down, I'll take her life." "Stop." Lord Crocodile leaped to his feet and stood between the two of them. "Yu Qianqiu, she has no grudge against you, why did you kill her? It's better to nip some things in the bud." Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and said, "If she wakes up and finds out that it was my master who injured her, and what I did just now. Based on her abilities, if she goes berserk, I won't be able to handle it. Rather than making such a strong enemy, it's better to kill him first and get rid of future troubles." "Are you crazy?" Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted. "If you don't say, and I don't say, who will know that it was your master who injured her? Who will know what you did to her just now?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "You really won't say?" "Don't worry. I know what I can say and what I can't," Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently. "Then forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Yu Qianqiu flung his sleeves and acted as if nothing had happened. He turned around and found a place to sit down. "You." Before Immortal Lord Crocodile could say anything, Yu Qianqiu interrupted. "Old monster, who are those people chasing after Ji Wu?" The anger on Immortal Lord Crocodile's face disappeared. He frowned and snorted. "They should be Yi Zhao's men. That bald man in black is called Rakshasa, and he is an early-stage immortal emperor. He is Yi Zhao's disciple. Rakshasa probably wants to seize power while Ji Wu is injured after Yi Zhao is dead." "Yes. From what you said, I think it's possible. If Ji Wu is dead, that bald man might become the boss of the East Holy Land." Yu Qianqiu nodded slowly. As he was thinking about this, he suddenly realized that Immortal Lord Crocodile was taking off his clothes. In the blink of an eye, he was only left with his underwear. Yu Qianzhou's mouth opened wide. He looked at the unconscious Ji Wu, then at the almost naked and muscular immortal Lord Crocodile. He said in surprise, "Old monster, you don't have to be so anxious when you see your lover." As he said that, he quickly got up and waved his hand. "I don't like to watch live performances. I'll go back in 4 hours. Is that enough?" Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted and could not be bothered with him. He knew that whenever this kid was free, the more he bothered with him, the more trouble he would cause. He flung his long hair, and his braids were instantly untied. He took out a yellow pill and walked to the side of the pool. He crushed the yellow pill into powder with his palms and mixed it with the pool water. He began to rub it on his hair and face, and bit by bit, his whole body. Soon, his whole body looked like it was covered in black paste. Immortal Lord Crocodile dived into the pool, and the clear pool water instantly turned murky. When he walked out of the pool again, his body had recovered to its original fair complexion. He turned around, and water splashed everywhere. Suddenly, his body was wrapped in a layer of white light. When the white light disappeared, he was already dressed in a silver robe. With his long silver hair draped over his shoulders, the dignified immortal Lord Crocodile appeared again. Yu Qianzhou looked at him with a disgusted expression, a naughty smile on his face. Immortal Lord Crocodile's hair stood on end. He took out another yellow pill from his storage bracelet and threw it to him. "You should recover too." Yu Qianzhou caught the yellow pill and looked at it. He put it away and said, "I'll stay like this for now. It's more convenient when I'm in the Holy East lands." Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He looked at himself and did not say anything. He walked to the side and sat on the ground. Yu Qianzhou looked at him, then at the unconscious Ji Wu on the ground. He finally could not help but snicker. "Old monster, I really couldn't tell. You're quite mindful of your image in front of a beautiful woman." Immortal Lord Crocodile was not afraid of his mockery. He said calmly, "Of course. Although my cultivation is not as good as before, I was one of the 12 great immortal lords with her. There's no reason for her to look down on me. There are always setbacks in life. When one is down and out, one does not catch the eye of one's acquaintances. He will rise again in the future. Hee. It's human nature. I understand." Yu Qianzhou did not continue to provoke him. He tilted his head to look at the unconscious Ji Wu. "When will she wake up? It should be about time." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. "When she wakes up, she will be able to take care of herself. She will recover quickly." As he spoke, he suddenly frowned and flashed to Ji Wu's side. Yu Qianzhou looked over. Ji Wu's eyebrows moved slightly, and her eyes slowly opened. Perhaps because she suddenly realized that there were people beside her, and her subconscious was still in the pursuit, she was on high alert. She disappeared on the spot and flashed into the air. Her long cloud sleeves fluttered, and her white clothes fluttered. She looked like a fairy descending. Her bright eyes flashed, and she said sternly, "Who are you?" As soon as she said that, she frowned and covered her abdomen with one hand. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. Her expression was one of pain. She was obviously seriously injured. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately raised his hand and shouted, "Sister Ji Wu, you have not recovered from your injuries. Don't be rash. Look carefully. Don't you recognize me?" Ji Wu's body trembled, and she slowly raised her head. Her bright eyes fell on Immortal Lord Crocodile, revealing an expression of disbelief. After looking at him repeatedly, she confirmed that it was true. She immediately floated to Immortal Lord Crocodile's side like a fairy. She said hoarsely, "Brother Crocodile, you are still alive. But your cultivation, how weren't you killed by the 1,000 Swords Demon Lord? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly, causing the cave to tremble. His laughter was full of sorrow. After a long time, he replied firmly, I was killed by the 1,000 Swords Demon Lord. Unfortunately, I was lucky, and I was not killed. I was suppressed for more than 100,000 years. As he spoke, he waved his hand and patted Yu Qianzhou's shoulder. Chapter 791. When the two old friends met, they naturally talked about many things. Their savior, Yu Qianzhou, was completely ignored. Yu Qianzhou didn't think much of it. He listened quietly at the side. He could tell that these two had a good relationship back in the immortal world. After chatting for a while, they talked about how they were being hunted. Ji Wu immediately gritted her teeth and said, I won't let those Rakshasa people off. In a fit of anger, she covered her abdomen with her hand again, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. According to her, she almost never interfered with anything in the East Holy Land. This mainland was basically ruled by Yi Shao. She had always been hiding in the West Palace. If it wasn't for Bai Changchun causing havoc in the immortal city and Yi Shao asking her for help, she wouldn't even have shown herself. However, she had never imagined that she, who had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, would be regarded as a stumbling block by the disciples of the Night Owl sect after she was injured, and they would launch a sneak attack on her. This was also the reason why she was so angry. Immortal Crocodile immediately raised his hand to comfort her. Sister, don't worry. It won't be too late to take revenge after you recover. They won't be able to escape from the heaven and earth universe array. As he spoke, he took out a bottle of pills and handed it over. I was overjoyed to see Sister. I spoke too much and almost delayed Sister's recovery. If there's anything, it won't be too late to talk about it after you've recovered. Ji Wu took over the bottle and poured out an immortal pill that was shrouded in a purple mist. For a moment, the entire karst cave was filled with a strange aroma that could refresh one's mind. Ji Wu looked at the elixir in her palm and smiled bitterly. Everyone has been sealed by the heaven and earth Qinquan array for so many years. Everything that needs to be used has been used up. Fortunately, we met Brother Crocodile. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would take for my little sister to recover. Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly and said, I'd rather use up all these things than be suppressed for 100,000 years and have my cultivation level greatly reduced. I don't know how long it will take for me to recover. But that's good too. I can finally put it to good use today. To be able to help Sister, it's worth being trapped for so many years. Saying so, he suddenly exclaimed. Sister, don't you have a golden fur immortal ape? Why don't I see him? Could he have been killed by Luo Sha and the others? Yu Qianzhou's ears perked up. Ji Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly, that's not it. Brother Crocodile, you might not know this, but the heaven and earth universe array is really strange. After the last battle with the 1,000 Swords Demon King, the immortal beasts and spirit beasts that we brought from the immortal world all showed abnormalities after a few years. The heaven and earth universe array seemed to be absorbing the spiritual energy in their bodies. As a result, those immortal beasts and spirit beasts withered year by year. In the end, not a single one of them could last for 30,000 years, and all of them died. I see. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly. Yu Qianzhou, who was at the side, seemed to have thought of something. He immediately sent a telepathic message, Old Monster, ask him what's going on with the fence meat. This had always been a mystery in his heart. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and changed the topic. Ji Wu frowned slightly and said, other than mining, the main reason why those warriors came was because Yi Shao had obtained a scroll of magic left behind by the demon Dao. It was said that it could break the heaven and earth universe array's seal, but it needed strong men to refine it. No one knew how many people had died in the experiment. More than 200 years ago, the night owl had successfully sent a disciple out. However, after that disciple went out, there was no news of him. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Originally, after this fence meet, Yi Xiao was going to try it himself. Who knew that a lunatic would suddenly appear and ruin Yi Xiao's dream? More than 200 years ago. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He finally understood where the immortal that the old man killed in the East Sea more than 200 years ago came from. He had never figured it out. It turned out that the immortal had escaped from the heaven and earth universe array. However, that person was too unlucky. He could have met anyone in the human world, but he actually met the top expert in the world. It was not an ordinary kind of bad life. He escaped from the heaven and earth universe array, but he was killed. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and smiled bitterly. So what if he got out? I'm afraid that person will not be able to return to the celestial world. Ji Wu was startled and said, Brother Crocodile, why do you say that? Did something happen outside? Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at Yu Qianqiu, but Yu Qianqiu knew what he was going to say. He kept signaling him with his eyes, trying to persuade him not to say it. After hesitating for a while, Immortal Lord Crocodile said, Yu Qianqiu, you don't have to worry. I believe that Sister Ji Wu is not that kind of person. Yu Qianqiu wanted to tell him that one could not know a person's heart, but he knew that anything he said now would be fake. Ji Wu looked at the two of them with a puzzled expression. She did not know what the two of them were talking about. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Ji Wu and said, the immortal ascension stage in the human world has been set up with the soul transformation smoke. With Yi Xiao's cultivation, even if he wanted to return to the celestial world through the netherworld realm, it would be difficult for him to pass through the netherworld realm. That's why I said it would be difficult for him to return to the celestial world. Ji Wu squeezed the immortal pill in her hand, her eyes flashing. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, Brother Crocodile, how do you know that the immortal ascension stage has been set up with the soul transformation smoke? Immortal Lord Crocodile explained, to tell you the truth, I have a way to enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. I have been to the immortal ascension stage once and saw the soul transformation smoke set up with my own eyes. What? Ji Wu exclaimed. Brother Crocodile can enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. To her, the soul transformation smoke was no longer important. The most unbelievable thing was that Immortal Lord Crocodile could enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. Damn it. They say that heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. I thought it was referring to people like me. I didn't expect demons to have a weakness for beauties too. Yu Qianqiu cursed silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded slightly. He waved his hand and slapped Yu Qianqiu again. His eyes rolled and he sighed. Don't underestimate him. Although his cultivation level is not high, his master is not to be underestimated. His master, old demon, you can't burn bridges after crossing the river. Yu Qianqiu swatted away the arm that was slapping his shoulder and roared crazily. This time, he was really angry. He did not expect Immortal Lord Crocodile to reveal all his secrets. Why? You don't want to find the purple fire anymore? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked calmly. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He pointed at Immortal Lord Crocodile and sneered. You win. If you don't take my words seriously, then we'll see who is more ruthless. Immortal Lord Crocodile paused. He remembered that he did promise not to say anything. In addition, he still needed Ji Wu's help to leave the heaven and earth universe array. He immediately turned and said, Sister Ji Wu, let me ask you something. You have been here for many years. Do you know where the purple fire that supports the heaven and earth universe array is hidden? Purple fire. Ji Wu paused. Seeing that Immortal Lord Crocodile had changed the topic, she knew that he would not say anything more. However, Thinking that even immortal Lord Crocodile said that Yu Qianqiu's master was not to be underestimated, she did not dare to underestimate Yu Qianqiu. She stared at Yu Qianqiu seriously and said, "Why are you looking for the purple fire? No one can go near that place." "Sister, don't say any more." Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand to stop her from continuing. He asked, "When we first fought the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, I remember that you saved Silver Armor Soldier's life. Silver Armor Soldier gave you a token, saying that if you encountered any trouble in the Netherworld, you could ask him for help. If the two of us break into the Netherworld, are you confident that you can get the Silver Armored Army to escort us back to the immortal world?" Ji Wu's bright eyes immediately flashed with extraordinary splendor. She seemed very excited. She never dreamed that there would be a day when she could escape the cage of the heaven and earth formation. After he calmed down a little, he seemed a little hesitant and said, "There is such a thing, but the Emperor of the Underworld has never been too fond of the people of the immortal world. I'm afraid that even the Silver Armor Army may not be able to make this decision." Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded with approval. If Ji Wu had agreed immediately, he might have been skeptical about what would happen next. But now, it seemed that Ji Wu was still the same Ji Wu from back then. He immediately laughed and said, "You don't have to worry about this. I have dealt with the Silver Armored Army a few times. He is a man who values friendship and is also the commander of the Emperor of the Underworld's guards. He is highly regarded by the Emperor of the Underworld. As long as he is willing to help, the chances of the Emperor of the Underworld not giving him face are very small. He will definitely help him return this favor." He turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I believed you at first when you said that you could help me recover my cultivation. But after thinking about it, I really felt that it was a little unreliable. Let's not talk about the past. Now that I have met Sister Ji Wu, I have hope of returning to the immortal world. Please help me. As long as you send us out of the heaven and earth formation, I will ask Sister Ji Wu to tell you where the purple flames are. It is much better than asking around blindly and taking great risks." Then he secretly transmitted his voice, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone the secret of you collecting the purple flames to cultivate the Samadhi true fire. This is mainly because of your master, who is worthy of my respect. Besides, I might as well warn you in advance that you may be able to collect the purple flames, but if you want to fuse them into the Samadhi true fire, I'm afraid your current cultivation is far from enough. You'd better take care of yourself." Damn it! He was indeed a shrewd old man. He had been deceived by his silly appearance. At the crucial moment, he was playing tricks on him. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He should have thought of this earlier. How could a person ranked among the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world be simple? He was just pretending to be ignorant. "Tell me. Where is the purple flames?" Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said. Ji Wu could obviously see that there seemed to be a story between the two. She looked at Immortal Crocodile inquiringly, asking if he should tell her. Immortal Crocodile pondered for a moment and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't misunderstand and don't overthink it. I have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. Similarly, I trust you." He then turned to Ji Wu and nodded. "Tell him first." Ji Wu looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu with a somewhat curious gaze. She slowly said, "In the easternmost region of this continent, there's a barren wasteland where not even a blade of grass grows. Someone once saw traces of purple flames there. Why don't you go there and take a look?" Chapter 792. The Easternmost Land. Yu Qianqiu was surprised. In the easternmost part of this continent. Ji Wu nodded slightly to confirm. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and asked, "Do you have a specific location?" "The easternmost land is too big. Can you be more specific?" "I can't be more specific. No one knows the specific location because no one can go deep into it. In addition, rumor has it that the purple fire appears and disappears randomly. You can't see it unless it's by chance. Those who have seen it before are purely coincidental. So, I can't tell you the specific location, Ji Wu explained. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded. That depends on your luck. Yu Qianqiu was silent for a long time before he raised his head to look at the two. His gaze landed on Immortal Lord Crocodile, and he slowly said, "Old monster, I can bring the two of you out of the heaven and earth universe formation, but you have to promise me that you will not stay in the human world." Before he finished, Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand indifferently. "You worry too much. You don't have to worry about that. It's meaningless for us to stay in the human world. Once we're out of the heaven and earth universe formation, we'll go straight to the netherworld and return to the celestial world. From then on. Ha! If fate allows it, we'll meet again in the celestial world." "All right," Yu Qianqiu said firmly. "I believe you. I hope you're not lying to me. Otherwise, I'll send you off now." "Wait." Ji Wu stretched out her arms and said with a hint of anger in between her brows, "Now is not the time to leave. Wait until I recover and kill those Rakshasa people. We can't just let them go like this." Those who could make it to the celestial world's 12 great immortal lords were indeed not to be trifled with. Beauties were no exception. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Ji Wu and thought. Immortal Lord Crocodile frowned and said, "Sister Ji Wu, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Ji Wu was startled. She seemed to have guessed what Immortal Crocodile was going to say. Her eyes flickered, and she bit her lip. She bowed slightly and said, "Brother Crocodile, if you have something to say, just say it. I will listen." "Sister, it is indeed important to recover from your injuries first. But revenge." Immortal Lord Crocodile hesitated for a while and said slowly, "In my opinion, if you really want revenge, don't you think trapping the Rakshasa and the others here forever is the greatest revenge? Besides, I'm worried that things might change if we delay. Of course, I'm just saying. You can make the decision yourself." Ji Wu bit her lip. She seemed to have made up her mind and said, "Sister, listen to Brother Crocodile. Give me 3 days to heal." Immortal Crocodile nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Wait for us for 3 days. Bring us out of the heaven and earth Qian Kun array 3 days later. How about that?" "Sure," Yu Qianqiu agreed. He walked to the side and sat down with his eyes closed. He looked calm on the surface, but he felt that he had agreed too rashly. However, there was nothing he could do. With their cultivation levels, he could not do anything to them. Immortal Lord Crocodile must have known that. If he didn't agree, Ji Wu's injuries would heal sooner or later. Once she recovered, with her cultivation level, the Holy East Land would be her world, and it would be very difficult for him to have the chance to collect the purple flames again. Ji Wu also swallowed the immortal pill and immediately sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the two of them and sat down cross-legged in between them. Inside the cave, the sun and the moon did not know. To them, time was like a flash of light in the cave. 3 days in the cave passed quickly. Yu Qianqiu's heart was not at peace during these 3 days. He kept thinking of countermeasures in case something unexpected happened. In less than 3 days, Ji Wu was the first to stand up, feeling refreshed. Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and smiled. "Sister, how do you feel?" Ji Wu bowed and said, "It's all thanks to Big Brother Crocodile's elixir. Otherwise, I would not have recovered so quickly. Let me freshen up first, then I will leave the heaven and earth universe formation with Big Brother Crocodile." After saying that, she turned and walked to the pool. She did not even take off her clothes. The pool water slowly submerged her. The water rippled, and there was a white figure dancing under the water. "Damn it. How could she bathe like this without taking off her clothes? Yu Qianzhou was speechless and a little disappointed. However, when the beauty came out of the water again, Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. Ji Wu slowly walked out of the water. Her long hair was wet, and her skin was smooth. She had washed away the blood on her body. Water droplets dripped from her cold, pretty face. She was like a thorny rose in the morning, enduring the dew. Coupled with the sunlight in the cave, it was really tempting. She raised her hands high and tied her long hair into a bun again. The palace gauze wrapped around her body, accentuating her exquisite curves. However, good things did not last long. As soon as Ji Wu walked to the shore, a white mist rose from her body. As the mist dissipated, the hibiscus out of the water instantly returned to her cold and dignified appearance. She seemed to notice that someone was looking at her. She stared at him coldly with a murderous look. Yu Qianzhou shivered and immediately turned his head to the side awkwardly. He saw Immortal Lord Crocodile staring at him with a sneer. It seemed to be saying, "I don't even dare to look at you." "You're really brave." Yu Qianzhou coughed and stood up. He glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, "Can the two of you leave now?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Ji Wu inquiringly. Ji Wu nodded. He also stood up and explained to Ji Wu, he's going to use a magical teleportation array. He'll need the girl's cooperation later. Close your eyes first, he told Ji Wu what Yu Qianzhou had told him. The latter frowned slightly and muttered softly, teleportation array. Although she did not understand, she trusted Immortal Lord Crocodile and nodded in agreement. Everyone, stand closer. Yu Qianzhou put on an act and called the two of them to his side. Then, he threw a few small silver balls at them. Then, he formed hand seals and muttered something. Ji Wu looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile in confusion. Seeing that he had already closed his eyes, she hesitated for a moment and closed her eyes as well. In the blink of an eye, Ji Wu heard a shrill wind in her ears. The temperature dropped a lot. She noticed that her surroundings seemed to have changed. Her eyes moved under her eyelids. She wanted to open her eyes to take a look, but she did not dare to take the risk. In the end, she held back. Yu Qianzhou looked around and smiled at the two of them. Okay, we're here. The two of them opened their eyes at the same time, only to see that their surroundings were dark and gloomy, and the chilly wind was howling. In front of them was a gloomy and terrifying cave with its mouth wide open, like a monster opening its mouth and roaring. The strong chilly wind was blowing out from that cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Ji Wu looked at each other. The latter cried out, "Ninth Netherworld Cave." Ji Wu was in disbelief. She took a few steps forward and stood at the edge of the cliff. She stared at the cave opposite and said in a trembling voice, "It's really the Ninth Netherworld Cave." She turned back and said excitedly, "Big Brother Crocodile, am I dreaming? This is the Ninth Netherworld Cave. I'm really out of the heaven and earth universe formation. Is this real?" Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled and nodded. He turned to Yu Qianzhou and said, "Thank you. We will keep your secret. We will never tell anyone about it. I hope we will meet again in the immortal world." He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me a storage bag." "What for?" Yu Qianzhou asked suspiciously, but he still took out a storage bag and handed it to Immortal Lord Crocodile. After Immortal Monarch Crocodile received the interspatial pouch, he immediately took out a bunch of shiny black things from his storage bracelet and put them into the interspatial pouch. Yu Qianzhou's eyes widened in shock, and his heart thumped wildly. Divine Grade Spirit Stones. Is it for me? Sure enough, Immortal Monarch Crocodile handed it back to Huang Xiaolong with a smile. "I don't have anything to thank you with, but I can see that you like spirit stones. Here are 200 million divine grade spirit stones, take it as our thanks for your help. With a beauty by my side, I have to be polite." Yu Qianzhou's heart ached, but he pretended to be serious and grabbed the storage bag tightly. He pretended to decline. You're too polite. We helped each other, and it's just a small favor. There's no need to be so polite. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at his hand that was clutching the storage bag tightly. He shook his head and laughed. If you can successfully return to the immortal world with little sister Ji Wu, with her cultivation, these spirit stones are nothing. If you can't return smoothly, it's a waste to keep these spirit stones. You should just accept them. He let go of the storage bag. Since you've put it this way, I won't be unreasonable. Yu Qianzhou quickly stuffed the storage bag into his robe and touched his chest. A smile bloomed on his face. Suddenly, his eyes turned, and he took out a small silver bowl. He pretended to inject a few spells into it, then grabbed Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand and stuffed it into his palm. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He was very familiar with this thing. He asked, "What do you mean?" "That." Yu Qianzhou sighed. "As you said, I hope we'll have a chance to meet in the immortal world. If you can successfully pass through the netherworld and return to the immortal world, you can scatter this small silver ball somewhere in the immortal world. If I really have a chance to go to the immortal world, I'll be able to sense it. At least I'll know that you've arrived safely. If possible, I might go find you, old monster, to reminisce about old times. Do you welcome me?" Immortal Lord Crocodile paused, then immediately laughed. "Okay, it's a deal. We'll meet again in the immortal world if there's a chance." He put the silver ball in his hand into his bracelet. Yu Qianzhou took 2 steps back and cupped his hands at the two. "I wish the two of you a smooth journey and a safe return to the immortal world. Please." He raised his hand and gestured to the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Ji Wu looked at each other. The latter nodded slightly at Yu Qianzhou to express his gratitude. Then, they turned into 2 rays of white light and flashed into the 9th netherworld cave. Yu Qianzhou stood on the cliff, facing the chilly wind blowing out of the cave expressionlessly. He seemed to be waiting for something. After a long time, the 9th netherworld cave suddenly spewed out a strong, ink-black chilly wind. The howling of the wind was mournful. After a while, it slowly calmed down. He slowly heaved a sigh of relief. The change in the 9th netherworld cave just now meant that someone had opened the gate to the netherworld and finally sent these 2 great gods away. Chapter 793. Although Immortal Crocodile did not do anything wrong, Yu Qianzhou still felt that Immortal Crocodile was the one who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. Thinking of this, he wanted to give Immortal Crocodile a few more silver balls and ask him to help him throw some into the netherworld, but he was afraid of arousing Immortal Crocodile's suspicions, so he held back in the end. After being distracted for a while, he turned around and saw Yu Ji and the others from the Evil Wind Valley bowing to him. Obviously, they were attracted by the changes in the 9th netherworld cave. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand expressionlessly and said, "There's nothing else, disperse." After saying that, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was back in the karst cave where he had stayed before. He looked around and found that he was the only one left, so he was a little disappointed. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and snickered again. He looked at his palm and sighed, "Even in the immortal world, who has ever touched immortal monarch dancing G's butt? I have touched it, hee." Amidst the laughter, he took off his clothes and changed into the almost naked fur clothes of the cannibals. Then, he carried a spear, flashed into the cave wall, and quickly rose to the surface. After reaching the surface, he poked his head out and looked around. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he climbed out of the ground. After determining the direction to the east, he carried his spear and flew through the forest at a moderate speed. Along the way, he hunted a few wild pheasants, tied his legs, and carried the spear on his shoulder. Swinging his braids, he continued to hurry on his way. He looked valiant and heroic, as well as romantic and elegant. However, the movement in the sky was too big, and there were people flying over every few days. He had no choice but to stop and use his feet to cross the mountains. Whenever this happened, he could always feel that someone was spying on him. With his impenetrable cultivation and realistic disguise, he was lucky enough to pass. In the end, he realized that this method was stupid and too dangerous. Why didn't he use the earth element method? He identified the direction and sank hundreds of meters underground, using the earth art to fly quickly. Along the way, when he encountered rocks blocking his way, he would immediately use the earth and metal arts at the same time. When he encountered the obstruction of an underground river, he would immediately switch to the water arts. It could be said that his journey underground was unimpeded. Other than popping his head out from time to check if he had gone in the wrong direction, he basically buried his head in the pitch-black underground. He even thought that even Earth Traveler's son of the divine sealed decree might not have been as awesome as he was. While he was lost in his thoughts, Yu Qianqiu, who was speeding underground, suddenly came to an emergency stop. He used the earth spell to sense and confirm again. He frowned and muttered, "It's empty in front. Is it another underground cave?" He slowly moved forward and drilled into a stone wall. After moving forward for about 10 meters, he felt that he had reached the edge of the space in front of him. He quietly stuck his head out to take a look and was shocked. He quickly retracted his head. Who would build a hall hundreds of meters underground? Yu Qianqiu was bewildered. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, so he stuck his head out of the green stone wall to take a closer look. This time, he was certain that it was indeed an underground palace. Moreover, it was a very grand underground palace. The interior of the palace was filled with an ancient and thick, eerie and terrifying aura. There were some fluorites embedded in the surroundings, but there weren't many of them. The dim lighting made the palace even more eerie and terrifying. In a moment of curiosity, Yu Qianqiu carried a spear on his shoulder and a few wild pheasants on it. He tiptoed out from the stone wall. He carefully looked around, focusing on the dark passage that connected to the palace. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he discovered that there wasn't a single person. There wasn't a single chair in the palace. It was completely empty and spotless. There was only a high platform in the center that had steps leading up to it. On the high platform, there was a pentagonal platform. There was a stone carving on the stone wall behind the platform. It seemed to be the back view of a scholar writing in front of a writing desk. The carving was very lifelike, but the face couldn't be seen. It seemed mysterious and strange. Yu Qianqiu was getting more and more curious. Why would the stone carving on the main seat use the back view of a scholar as the main character? What was the meaning of this? Could it be that this scholar had some unusual meaning? He looked at the stone walls on his left and right, and was attracted by the stone carvings on the walls on both sides. On both sides, there were 6 men wearing mighty battle armor. Their faces were lifelike, but they were all different. However, each of them had an extraordinary aura. There were a total of 12 people on both sides. All of them were facing the portrait of the scholar's back on the stone wall, as if they were in awe of the scholar, giving the impression that they were all the scholar's subordinates. Could it be that this was an underground palace used for sacrificial ceremonies? Who would dig a palace several hundred meters underground? Yu Qianqiu carried a spear with a few wild pheasants on it. He stood in the main hall and rubbed his chin. Suddenly, his body trembled. He looked at the 12 armored statues on both sides in a daze. He suddenly remembered that there was a group of practitioners from the underworld in the Eastern Holy Land. It was said that they lived in the underground world. Could this underground palace be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Could they be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Yu Qianqiu stared at the stone carving of the scholar on the main seat on the high platform. He gasped and mumbled to himself, Could it be that this scholar is the legendary emperor of the underworld? How could the emperor of the underworld be a scholar? That's right. He is the emperor of the underworld, the ruler of the underworld. A woman's voice rang out behind him. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He turned around hastily and accidentally threw the few dead wild pheasants on the spear far away. He saw a woman in black clothes with half of her face covered by a black veil. She had long hair that reached her shoulders. Other than the black veil on her face, she had no other accessories on her body. Although she looked like a living person, the deathly energy on her body was even heavier than that of Yu Ji of the chilly Wind Valley. She was looking at him curiously. Who are you? Yu Qianqiu held the spear with both hands and pointed it at her. His action seemed a bit childish. The mysterious woman glanced at the wild pheasant that had fallen to the ground, then looked at Yu Qianqiu's almost naked attire, and a stunned expression appeared on her face as she asked in a puzzled voice, "Are you a native from another tribe?" Then she reacted and said with a frown, "It's impossible. How could a native of the outside world break into this place?" Who are you? Yu Qianqiu had calmed down and was ready to leave at any time. He put away the spear and walked over to pick up the wild pheasants he had thrown aside. He put the pheasants on the spear and put them on his shoulder again. He looked at her and sneered, "You don't dare to show your true face. Where did you come from? How dare you break into this place?" "I broke into this place." The woman paused and said, "This is the sacred hall I built myself. I am the underworld saintess appointed by His Majesty the Emperor of the underworld. How could I be a female thief?" Yu Qianqiu was startled when he heard this. He didn't expect that this woman would tell him all her secrets just by asking casually. Why did he feel that she was a bit stupid? With a tentative attitude, he asked, "The underworld saintess. How come I have never heard of it? What does the underworld saintess do?" "Preside over all the important ceremonies of the underworld," the mysterious woman asked rhetorically. "You don't even know this." "Oh. I think I have heard of it," Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly. He relaxed his vigilance a little. He had already evaluated this so-called underworld saintess as an idiot 80%. But he still didn't dare to underestimate her. He was afraid that he would run into another person who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. "Who are you? How could you enter the sacred hall?" the underworld saintess asked. "What's so strange about that?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at the passageway behind her and said, "Of course I walked in from there. Otherwise, where do you think I came in from?" "Impossible." The underworld saintess shook her head and said, "Unless there is some important ceremony, even the 12 netherworld generals under the emperor of the underworld wouldn't dare to break into this place." "Are you serious?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "If that's the case, your status in the underworld is even higher than the 12 netherworld generals. Your cultivation level is also higher than theirs." "My cultivation level isn't as high as theirs, but they are very respectful to me and have always protected me," the underworld saintess said calmly. "Have always protected you?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "Why did I hear that the 2 netherworld generals here have already been killed? How can they still protect you?" "That's because they have completed their mission. I no longer need their protection. This is also their destiny." The underworld saintess spoke slowly and then walked over gracefully. Yu Qianqiu quickly dodged to the side. However, he saw that she had no intention of doing anything to him. Instead, she silently walked past him and walked up the stairs to the high platform. Yu Qianqiu realized that this woman didn't make any sound as she walked. It was no wonder that he didn't know she was behind him. She walked to the back of the pentagonal platform and faced the bottom. She nodded slightly at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Come up." "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked casually. However, this woman's words and actions always gave off a gentle and harmless vibe, causing people to involuntarily let down their guard. He thought for a moment and followed her instructions. He carefully walked up the stairs with the long spear in his hand. When he walked up to the high platform, he realized that the pentagonal platform was actually a sand table. It was filled with fine black sand. The underworld saint stretched out her pale hand from her black sleeves and picked up a thin silver stick from the sand table. She gently swept the surface of the sand table until it was flat. Then, she said to Yu Qianqiu, "Use your left hand to press a handprint on the sand table." "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked again. However, he still shifted the spear from his left shoulder to his right shoulder. He stared at the underworld saintess without moving his eyes. He was afraid that she would play tricks on him. However, he was staring at his left palm from the corner of his eyes as he gently pressed it on the black sand table. However, just as his palm pressed on the sand table, he suddenly felt an inexplicable restlessness in his heart. He felt strange. Why did he have to do as she said? He immediately rubbed his palm and erased the handprint on the sand table. He stared at the underworld saintess and sneered, "Why should I listen to you?" Chapter 794. The netherworld saintess didn't answer. Her gaze was calm as she stretched out her pale right hand and slowly pressed it on the black sand table. Although the originally flat sand table had been messed up by Yu Qianqiu, she still accurately found the position where Yu Qianqiu pressed his palm. The position where their palms pressed overlapped. Yu Qianqiu looked at her suspiciously. He didn't know what this so-called netherworld saintess was doing. Although he didn't know what the face under the black veil looked like, judging from the delicate outline of the upper half of her face, her appearance shouldn't be too bad. Under her brows that were like distant mountains, her eyes were slightly closed, revealing a faint puzzled expression. The netherworld saintess opened her eyes and withdrew her pale palm from the sand table. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked curiously, "Why is it like this?" "Like what?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept over the sand table, but he couldn't see anything. He expressed his suspicions and asked, "What are you doing?" The netherworld saintess swept the sand table with her silver rod again, and then gently placed it on the sand table. A silver line was immediately inlaid on the fine black sand. The two colors were very conspicuous, suddenly giving people a mysterious and shocking feeling. Yu Qianqiu's heart thumped. He felt that something was strange and quickly looked away. The netherworld saintess looked at him with a serene and peaceful gaze. It was filled with a purity that stood aloof from worldly affairs, and also seemed to contain the light of wisdom that could see through everything. After carefully sizing up Yu Qianqiu, the black veil revealed a strange tone and said, "Your life should have ended long ago, but why are you still alive and well? What a strange fate, even I can't see through it. What are you babbling about? You, the netherworld saintess, can't be a witch, right?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He suddenly thought of something from the sentence, "Your life should have ended long ago." Whether it was him in his previous life or this body in this life, as the netherworld saintess said, his life should have ended long ago, the other party's words made him feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He coughed and asked tentatively, "I say, saintess, do you know how to read fortunes?" The netherworld saintess suddenly fell into silence. Her clear eyes suddenly turned pitch black, as if there were stars swimming in them. Yu Qianqiu was immediately startled, and he looked at her nervously. After a long time, her eyes finally returned to normal. She looked at him quietly and said, "You are a variable. I can't figure out your fate. I can't predict your fate. The two netherworld generals who protected me have fallen. It seems that I will not be too long before I return." Yu Qianqiu was tickled by her mysterious words. He scratched his head and asked again, "You really know how to read fortunes?" "I don't know how to read fortunes, but I try to understand the fate of others. It is my honor to be able to understand the fate of others," the netherworld saintess said calmly. When she said this, he could actually feel a sense of piety and holiness from her body. She really had the demeanor of a master of metaphysics. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. The more humble a person was, the more he believed that they were truly capable. He casually threw the spear on his shoulder along with a few hard pheasants off the stage. He rubbed his hands excitedly and respectfully and asked for guidance. "Respected Saintess, my life is long and full of confusion. Please understand my fate. Let me know how I should walk in the future, so that I can make as few mistakes as possible." The Netherworld Saintess quietly shook her head and said, "Your fate is full of variables, and I can't understand it. Even if I can understand the fate of others, I won't tell anyone. Otherwise, I will change the fate of others, and that will be my sin. I will lose the ability to understand the fate of others. Don't force me. Even the Emperor of the Underworld never forces me." Having said that, she turned around and bowed to the sculpture of the Emperor of the Underworld on the stone wall with her arms folded. Then, she walked around the pentagonal stage and walked down the stairs. Yu Qianqiu followed her obediently and said, "I won't let you tell anyone about it. You can just point me in the right direction and let me use it as a reference. I don't think it's too much to ask of you, right?" The Netherworld Saintess walked slowly toward the passage, ignoring him. Yu Qianqiu said, "Hey," a few times. Finally, he couldn't help but say angrily, "I think you are a liar. You obviously don't know anything, but you still pretend to be profound." The Netherworld Saintess, who was near the entrance of the passage, suddenly turned around and stared at him. Goading her worked. Yu Qianqiu stopped, his expression stiff. "It's easy to prove that you are not a liar. You can calculate how many wives I will have in the future, how high my cultivation will be, and how long my lifespan will be." He asked a series of questions in one breath, because he guessed that this woman might be someone with great ability. Otherwise, how could she be appointed as the Netherworld Saintess by the Emperor of the Underworld? Moreover, she was easy to talk to and didn't have a bad temper. He wouldn't miss such an opportunity. "Yu Qianqiu, I can't help you. You should leave the way you came. Don't follow me anymore. The people outside the Divine Hall won't be as polite to you as I am to you." Having said that, the Netherworld Saintess turned around and left. Yu Qianqiu was immediately dumbstruck. From the moment he had entered, he had never mentioned his name. Yet, the other party had actually called out his name. "This." Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted at the departing figure, "Since you already know my name, what's your name? I don't know where I come from. I don't know what my name is, and I don't know who I am. Maybe I don't even have a name. From the moment I woke up, the Emperor of the Underworld told me that I came from the endless darkness, and that I am the Netherworld Saintess. From that moment on, they all called me the Netherworld Saintess, so I am the Netherworld Saintess. I don't have a name. I am the Netherworld Saintess, and the Netherworld Saintess is me." As the figure of the Netherworld Saintess disappeared into the depths of the long tunnel, the voice also faded away. Yu Qianqiu stood alone in the dim underground sacred hall for a while. He wanted to go out with the Netherworld Saintess, but he didn't dare to. Just as the Netherworld Saintess had said, the meditation practitioners outside would not be polite to an intruder like him. Looking around the holy palace once more, he suddenly felt as if he was dreaming. He had suddenly appeared here, and then a woman who claimed to be the Underworld Saintess had suddenly appeared. After a baffling conversation, he felt as if it was all very surreal. It was as if the two of them were destined to meet here for a short period of time. He calmed himself down and stopped thinking about it. It was more important to do his own things. Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on the things he had thrown away. He walked over and skewered a wild pheasant with his long spear and carried it on his shoulder again. Suddenly, he began to walk in the footsteps of a Beijing opera. He pointed his finger at the wall in front of him. His eyes were wide open as he shouted, "Look at the dark hole in front of us. It must be the thieves' lair. Wait for me to catch up and kill them all." Dong, dong, dong. He rushed into the wall and disappeared. It was lonely to travel alone in the dark underground. Moreover, the speed underground was not as fast as flying in the sky, so he could only find ways to relieve his boredom. A few days later, he suddenly felt that the surrounding soil was getting harder and harder, and the surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. Feeling curious, he came out of the ground to check, and to make sure that he had not deviated from the direction he was walking. A head suddenly popped out of a vast and desolate Gobi desert. The head was full of small braids, and it was looking around. This was a very wide desert, and there were no obstacles in sight. The sky was high, the clouds were clear, and the sun was bright and clear. Yu Qianqiu directly jumped out of the ground and breathed in the fresh air. He had been so bored underground for the past few days. This place was spacious enough. Although it was easy to be discovered by others, it was also easy for him to discover others, which was good for escaping. Now, he felt sick at the thought of going underground. The excitement he had when he had mastered the earth formula had already faded away in the past few days. Anyone who went underground and had to see rats and earthworms running around in fear would not be able to feel happy. He carried the long spear and swayed for a while, but he did not find any signs of anyone flying in the sky. The surroundings were also desolate. Other than the grayish-brown gravel, there was no sign of life, not even a blade of grass. Such signs might have something to do with the high temperature here, which was abnormal. But it was also to his liking. It was better if there was no one. He put away the spear and flew freely in the vast Gobi desert. He did not encounter any obstacles along the way, but the temperature was getting higher and higher. It was so high that it was scary. If he did not cultivate the fire formula, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it for long, no matter how high his cultivation was. As far as Chu Tian's eyes could see, a hazy gray shadow suddenly appeared on the Gobi desert. When he got closer, he discovered that it was a continuous range of mountains. Once he flew above the mountains, he suddenly felt that he could not bear it, and landed on a bare mountain top. The mountains in front of him were all bare. Animals and plants could not possibly survive under such high temperature. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and his face showed some surprise. He really could not understand. Logically speaking, he cultivated the fire formula, so he should not be afraid of high temperature. But he actually faintly felt that he could not bear it. He looked in front of him. Judging from the feelings he had felt along the way, the temperature there should be even higher. He did not dare to go forward, afraid that he, a person who cultivated the fire formula, would be roasted. In the midst of his fear and hesitation, a pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly looked around, as if he was looking for something. Think about it, not to mention the temperature of ordinary fire, he was not even afraid of the tyrannical high temperature of the blue fire. Then what kind of high temperature in this world could deter him? Without a doubt, other than the legendary purple fire that ranked first in the true Samadhi fire, he really could not think of anything else that could have a higher temperature. Chapter 795. Thinking of this, his excitement overcame his fear of the high temperature. He gritted his teeth and continued to fly forward. He firmly believed that the place with the highest temperature was the place where the purple flames were most likely to appear, so he was looking for trouble. However, after flying for several kilometers, he felt that he could no longer fly. The temperature in front of him was simply too high, so high that it was frightening. He used the fire art to resist the high temperature, but he was still tormented by the high temperature. He fell from the sky in a sickly state, panting heavily as he looked around, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This godforsaken place was even more fiery than the flaming mountain in Journey to the West. It was probably comparable to Taishang Laojuan's 8 trigrams furnace. He did not know how that furry monkey managed to survive. It seemed like the legendary Samadhi true fire was used to refine Sun Wukong. Damn it! All hail Sun Wukong! Yu Qianqiu stood at the top of the mountain and took a deep breath. He immediately realized that the air around him was filled with the smell of sparks. He uprooted a large tree from Utopia and casually waved it out. As soon as it left the protection of his fire art, it immediately ignited with a buzz. The fire instantly became ferocious, and the tree that was filled with water instantly turned into ashes and scattered, leaving him speechless. Without a doubt, this was the easternmost land that Ji Wu had mentioned. No wonder she said that no one could go deep. Even he, who cultivated the fire art, could not endure it. No matter how high the cultivation of others was, it would probably be difficult. The sun was blazing in the sky, and the ground was thousands of times hotter than the sun. Yu Qianqiu felt like he was a bun in a steamer that was about to be cooked. However, looking around, the mountains rose and fell, and the world was vast. He could not see a single trace of the purple flames. He really could not stay any longer. If he did, he would definitely die, let alone go deeper. Yu Qianqiu immediately took out a small silver ball and prepared to leave. However, as soon as he threw the small silver ball, it turned into a pool of mercury before it even hit the ground. He was stunned for a moment, but immediately realized that the temperature was too high. Left with no choice, he found the small porcelain bottle that he had prepared in the past and gently placed it on the ground. As soon as it left his hand, the small porcelain bottle immediately turned into a grayish-brown color. Cracks appeared on its surface and it shattered into several pieces. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He took out a large lump of nether iron and tried again. However, the moment he let it go, the nether iron instantly emitted black smoke and turned into black water, dyeing the ground black. "Your grandfather, you can't expect me to retreat outside and come back in again, right?" Yu Qianqiu cursed as he pointed at his surroundings. In the end, Bai Changchun decided to go all out. He took out a storage bracelet and took out treasures one by one and threw them out. These were the treasures Bai Changchun had obtained when he killed Jin Miao and the others in the cannibal tribe. He wanted to see what kind of treasures could withstand such high temperatures. The result left him dumbfounded. All the treasures he had thrown out had turned into liquid metal. Yu Qianqiu was completely speechless. These were all treasures from the immortal world. The power of these purple flames was simply too terrifying. He had not even seen the purple flames yet, but the heat they emitted was already so terrifying. Speechless, he gritted his teeth and took out Jin Miao's defensive treasure, the golden umbrella. Once the golden umbrella was taken out, it immediately shone with golden light. What made him overjoyed was that it was indeed a treasure personally bestowed by the immortal emperor. It could actually withstand such terrifying heat. Damn, it really is a good treasure. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the golden light under the umbrella, was extremely cocky. Under the protection of the golden umbrella, the temperature inside and outside were worlds apart. Without a word, he immediately flew up with a big umbrella that shone with golden light. He hid under the umbrella and looked around contentedly, hoping to find traces of the purple flames. He was dressed almost completely naked, but he was flying with an umbrella. The way he was dressed was extraordinarily avant-garde. However, not long after, he realized that something was wrong. It seemed like the protective golden light emitted by the golden umbrella was a little chaotic and was shining dimly. Yu Qianqiu also felt the heat coming from the handle of the umbrella. Not good. This golden umbrella was powerful, but it could only last for a limited time. If he persisted any longer, this good treasure would be destroyed. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly landed and looked around anxiously. He had to find a way to leave a teleportation coordinate, or he would have to repeat the journey here indefinitely. After hesitating for a while, the golden umbrella had already begun to turn red, like a red-hot soldering iron. In his panic, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered the scene when Immortal Crocodile had used the divine sword to kill Jin Miao. The power of the divine sword could not even be blocked by the golden umbrella, so it was naturally more powerful than the golden umbrella. Moreover, the divine sword had absorbed his blood essence, so it was a good item to use as a teleportation coordinate. At this thought, he saw that the golden umbrella was about to collapse. He did not dare to hesitate anymore. The divine sword flashed quickly and stabbed into the ground with a swoosh. Yu Qianqiu directly carried the umbrella and disappeared on the spot. Lady Mu was meditating under a tall magnolia tree on Obedient Island in the demonic ghost domain when she suddenly heard the sound of something falling into the water, followed by a strange splash. When she opened her eyes, she immediately saw intense white smoke rising from the lake beside Obedient Island. It was a vast expanse of whiteness. Lady Mu teleported over with an angry look on her face. She was just about to rebuke the newcomer when she heard Yu Qianqiu's comfortable moans coming from the boundless white mist. She couldn't help but be startled. When the white fog rose and disappeared, she saw a shirtless Yu Qianqiu playing around in the lake with a golden umbrella. After the temperature had completely cooled down, Yu Qianqiu quickly flashed to Obedient Island and took out the golden umbrella again. The golden light from the umbrella's rim once again wrapped him up. Seeing that the treasure was not damaged, Yu Qianqiu finally heaved a sigh of relief and put away the golden umbrella. When he saw Miss Mu, who was looking at him with a surprised expression, he turned his hand and summoned a water dragon from the 1,000-mile lake. The meandering water shot over and instantly froze into a large block of ice that was several meters wide. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and send some fresh fruits over. I almost died from the heat." After saying that, he directly flashed into the big house and lay down on the mat on the ground, enjoying the cool shade. He still had a lingering fear of the terrifyingly high temperature in that damned place. After some time, Lady Mu smilingly came in with a plate of all kinds of fresh fruits. The plate was even sprinkled with crushed ice to cool it down. The fragrance of the cold fruits was refreshing. Yu Qianqiu got up and grabbed the fruits on the plate and chewed on them. He even swallowed a few pieces of ice. A chill rose from his stomach and he finally got rid of his fear of the high temperature. Just as he burped, he suddenly thought of the godly sword. He wondered if he could still withstand the heat after such a long time. Could it be like the golden umbrella, which could only withstand the heat for a while? Thinking of this, he suddenly became nervous. That was a good treasure. Please don't destroy it. He immediately disappeared from the big house. When he reappeared in that desolate and uninhabited place, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the godly sword sprang up from the ground and landed in his hand. He touched it everywhere and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The godly sword was indeed a godly sword. It was actually immune to high temperature. Even after such a long time, it was still as cold as an unsheathed sword. He finally heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed. Looking around, he enlarged the godly sword in his hand and held it in his arms to cool himself down. He then flew into the sky again and continued to search for traces of the purple flames in this barren land. When the high temperature was too much for him to bear, he once again took out the golden umbrella to resist for a period of time. When the golden umbrella could no longer withstand it, he immediately stabbed the godly sword into the ground and returned to Obedient Island with the golden umbrella to cool himself down again. After going back and forth like this for a long time, it was finally night time. As soon as night fell, Yu Qianqiu immediately became spirited. He thought that as long as the purple flames appeared, they would definitely shine. Night was the best time to find the purple flames. Under the starry sky, Yu Qianqiu, who had been tossing and turning in this barren land until the middle of the night, was not discouraged. It seemed that he would not give up until he found the purple flames. Under the repeated torture of the high temperature, his mental state was quite dispirited. However, he still forced himself to persevere in his search. This persisted for a few days. Whether it was the consumption of his mental state or the consumption of his true essence, it was extremely huge. At times like this fellow's commendable fighting spirit would come out and he would forcefully stuff a large amount of elixirs into his stomach to persevere. He firmly believed that as long as he put in the effort, he would be rewarded. Lady Mu did not know what he was doing, but she found that every time he came back, his condition would worsen. When she saw him eating elixirs as if they were his meals, she could not help but be secretly worried. Another 10 or so days passed. Yu Qianqiu, who had searched this barren land for thousands of miles, began to feel disappointed. Could it be that the purple flames could only be seen by those who were fated? And that he was not fated to see the purple flames? Or was it that the method he was searching for had gone astray? Or was there no purple flames here at all? After some reflection, he firmly believed that the abnormality of this place proved that there were purple flames here. As for whether it was fated or not, it could not compare to the word diligence. Diligence represented success, and diligence represented fate. The only thing he needed to reflect on now was that the method he was searching for was definitely wrong, and he had gone astray. Under the bright starry sky, the terrifyingly high temperature did not decrease in the slightest. Yu Qianqiu looked around and frowned as he pondered. Purple flames, what kind of form did they take? Chapter 796. After going through countless hardships and connecting all the clues together, at this moment, he suddenly understood. The reason why the purple flame could appear and disappear so mysteriously, making it so difficult for people to see it, was not because it could turn invisible, but because it could split into many parts, making it impossible for people to see it with the naked eye. Since he had determined that there were purple flames here, then this must be the eye of the heaven and earth formation. But why couldn't he see the purple flames? He now completely understood that it was not that he couldn't see the purple flames, but because the purple flames had split into parts and were scattered throughout the eye of the formation. No wonder he could smell sparks in the air when he first came in. He was actually in the world of purple flames, but he was looking for them everywhere. How could he find them? This must be what they meant by being in this mountain. He had gone down the wrong path from the beginning. He should not have used the fire technique to resist the high temperature here. In the end, he had suffered so much for nothing. The scorching heat was getting more and more unbearable, causing Yu Qianqiu to quickly wake up from his thoughts. He calmly swept his gaze across his surroundings. He stabbed the divine sword into the ground and sat cross-legged confidently on the mountain peak. The fire technique began to give up on resisting the high temperature, and instead boldly absorbed the fire elements hidden in the air. His train of thought was not wrong, but he had forgotten the most important point. He was currently in the space of purple flames. Giving up on resisting the high temperature was tantamount to suicide. Just like how he had collected the green and black flames, he had collected them near them. If he had rashly barged in, he would have died as well. His impulsive decision immediately caused him to taste the bitter consequences. The moment he gave up on resisting the high temperature, an endless pain, as if his body was being burned by raging flames, struck the deepest part of his soul. Ah! Before he could scream, he had lost all his senses and collapsed. Almost at this moment, a dazzling golden light erupted from his abdomen at the fastest speed, protecting him and quickly dispersing the endless heat around him. When a cool feeling spread from his dantian to his limbs and bones, he slowly woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately realized that he had done something stupid. When he got up, he was surprised to find that the high temperature around him did not dare to approach him. What was going on? His gaze fell on the divine sword in front of him, and his eyes immediately brightened. Could it be that the divine sword had displayed a miraculous effect to protect him? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was true. Suddenly, he felt that the high temperature around him was approaching again after he woke up. Not daring to hesitate any longer, he quickly sat down cross-legged and pushed the circulation of his fire art to the limit. Something strange happened. Just as he was about to activate the incantation to absorb the heat, the surrounding heat that was about to approach him seemed to have seen some kind of terrifying monster. They quickly dispersed, wanting to get as far away as possible. No matter how hard Yu Qianqiu tried to absorb, they would not come over even if they were beaten to death. It was as if they knew that once he absorbed them, they would become his vassals and puppets. In the blink of an eye, the temperature around Yu Qianqiu plummeted, F***ck. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and cursed. He looked around and quickly released his qi to lock onto a ball of high temperature in the air. Using a method similar to the absorbing stars technique, he forcefully absorbed the little sprites that were invisible to the naked eye into his body. After the things were absorbed into his body, Yu Qianqiu was 100% sure that what he had absorbed was indeed the elemental body of the purple fire. However, he found that the purple little sprites were 1,000 times more delicate than the black and blue fire elements. No wonder it was difficult to discover them after they were scattered. So that was the reason. Some of the purple little sprites were like prisoners that had been suppressed. They had been resisting stubbornly and seemed to be very unconvinced. However, after being escorted to his dantian, they immediately became excited when they saw the red fire attribute crystal bead that was operating. They took the initiative to rush over and circled around the red crystal bead twice, as if they were discussing something with the red crystal bead. When the red crystal bead agreed, the little fellows all rushed into the red crystal bead. Just as the purple fire elements entered, the red crystal bead immediately erupted with red light, illuminating the entire dantian. Yu Qianqiu was still secretly amused. Suddenly, he found that his dantian seemed to be summoning something. The purple fire elements that were hiding from him began to circle above his body. Gradually, they gathered in the sky and formed a purple cloud pillar. Then, they rushed over in a frenzy. Following the circulation of the fire art, it quickly drilled into every pore of his body and gathered in his meridians, forming a purple wave that rushed into his dantian. It desperately drilled into the sparkling red crystal bead. It was a lively scene. At this time, Yu Qianqiu was sitting quietly on the peak of the mountain. The purple cloud circled above his head. The scene was extremely spectacular. What outsiders did not know was that the temperature around him at this time was simply terrifying to the extreme. It was likely that nothing could come close. Usually, they would not dare to do this, but today's incident was too sudden, so they could not care less. They bowed in unison, and the leader said anxiously, "The world has changed. It is too dangerous to stay underground. We swear to protect the Saintess to the surface to temporarily hide. Saintess, please leave with us quickly." The underworld Saintess folded her arms and bowed to the wall carvings of the Emperor of the Underworld calmly. She then turned to face the four anxious people and said slowly, "Pass down my order. Everyone is to gather and prepare to return to the underworld. The great formation of heaven and earth is about to be broken." Chapter 797. When the four of them heard this, they were stunned. They all thought that they had heard wrongly and looked at each other inquisitively. When the netherworld Saintess quietly passed by the four of them, she said again, "The Eastern Holy Land is about to be broken. Everyone, gather. It's time to return to the netherworld." The four of them were instantly shocked and revealed expressions of indescribable joy. The words of others might be false, but to them, the Saintess' words were absolutely not false. They immediately bowed and said, "Understood." Then, two of them followed beside the netherworld Saintess to protect her, while the other two quickly went to pass on the order. Yu Qianqiu stared dumbfoundedly at the huge change between heaven and earth. He saw the 108 purple fireballs floating in the air move chaotically, as if they were being pulled by an invisible rope. They wanted to break free, but were pulled back by each other. However, because the weather was already chaotic, the invisible rope's power seemed to be limited. With a thunderous boom, the invisible rope finally broke. The 108 purple fireballs quickly rushed into the sky and condensed into a ball. The light gradually extinguished, turning back into purple mist and merging with the dark clouds in the sky. After the purple mist merged with the dark clouds, it immediately began to rain heavily. The pitter-patter was so rapid that it wantonly watered this vast desolate land. The barren hills and the desolate desert were instantly covered in mist. The high temperature that had persisted for who knew how many years had finally started to cool down. Perhaps after a few years, this place would become verdant and full of life. Who knew if there would be people thanking a certain person who had caused a great disaster at that time? The heavy downpour continued for an entire day, completely lowering the high temperature below. At this time, the lightning and thunder in the dark clouds began to die down. Then, a violent wind blew, and the dark clouds that filled the sky began to drift in all directions. Not long after, the world began to gradually regain its clarity, as if nothing had happened. Only the sudden change in temperature told of the huge change that had just occurred. Yu Qianqiu stood on the mountain peak like a drowned rat, completely dumbfounded. If he hadn't guessed wrong, he should have destroyed the formation eye of the heaven and earth formation. If I'm not wrong, the heaven and earth great array should have been broken by me. What he didn't know was that the so-called heaven and earth great array of heaven and earth contained the Tao of heaven and earth. Once the great array was set up, it would immediately absorb the power of heaven and earth to support the operation of the great array. The absorbed origin energy was converted into the 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly fiends to form the core of the formation. If one did not know the method to break this formation, it would be almost impossible to break it with brute force, unless one had the strength to destroy the entire planet. Yu Qianqiu's absorption of the purple fire elements had more or less destroyed the balance of the formation. As a result, the eye of the formation had appeared and was adjusting the balance of power on its own. But he had actually plucked away one of the fireballs that represented the 72 earthly fiends, completely destroying the balance of the eye of the formation. The 36 celestial dippers and 72 earthly fiends were in chaos, and the formation eye was destroyed by him. With the formation eye destroyed, the formation was naturally broken by him. The myriad swords demon lord, who had set up this formation back then, probably never would have thought that the heaven and earth great array could actually be broken by someone like this. On the tallest building in the immortal city, the Rakshasa, who had already become the actual owner of this place, led a group of people and looked at the dispersing dark clouds in the sky. Everyone felt a little baffled. They did not know why there was thunder and earth quaking. At that moment, a group of meditation cultivators suddenly appeared in the sky. They formed a group and hurried west. The Rakshasa frowned and shouted angrily with a hoarse voice, "Someone go and ask what exactly is going on." "Yes." A person behind him quickly caught up to the group of meditation cultivators. After asking around, he quickly flew back and said with cupped hands, "Sky. Sky. Sky." From the looks of it, he seemed to be so agitated that he did not know what to say. Slap. The Rakshasa immediately gave him a big slap and made him spin around. He shouted angrily, "Sky, what sky? Tell me, what exactly is going on?" That person immediately woke up from the slap, but the agitation on his face did not disperse. He cupped his hands again and reported, "The netherworld cultivators said that the heaven and earth great array has been broken. They want us to quickly return to the celestial world and not be trapped here anymore." "Nonsense. Don't you have a brain?" The Rakshasa shouted angrily and gave him another big slap. This slap was much heavier than the previous one. That person almost fell to the ground on the spot. After that person stumbled, he finally could not be agitated anymore. He covered his face and said with a sobbing tone, "It's true. They really said that. When I was flying just now, I also realized that the heaven and earth great array will not extract the celestial essence in my body anymore." The group of people looked at each other. The Rakshasa suddenly looked up into the sky and turned into a stream of light, shooting straight up into the sky. To his surprise, the heaven and earth great array was really broken. The height that he could not fly at because of the restriction of the great array before was now unimpeded. Moreover, there was no phenomenon of the celestial essence in his body being extracted again. However, after being pleasantly surprised for a while, his face instantly turned pale and he felt a chill down his spine. The Rakshasa suddenly thought of immortal Lord Ji-Wu whom he had ambushed and injured. The reason why he ambushed immortal Lord Ji-Wu was because he did not want to be restrained by others in this world. That was why he made a desperate move. Who knew that she would still escape? Now that the heaven and earth great array was broken, everyone had to return to the celestial world. Ambushing immortal Lord Ji-Wu was equivalent to doing nothing. The worst thing was that Ji-Wu was still not found. If the heaven and earth great array was not broken, everyone would listen to him and there would still be a chance to find immortal Lord Ji-Wu. But now that the great array was broken, who would be willing to stay in the human world to help him chase after Ji-Wu? In addition, Ji-Wu could now escape to a wider range, so the chance of finding her was even slimmer. He now regretted, really regretted. If he had known that the heaven and earth great array would suddenly collapse, he would definitely not have done that. Now that his master, Yi Shao, was dead, he would not have any backing even if he returned to the celestial world. It was impossible for him to defeat Ji-Wu. In a flash, a ruthless expression flashed across his face. He had already made up his mind that the most important thing now was to return to the celestial world as soon as possible and find a reliable backing at all costs. That way, he would not have to fear Ji-Wu's revenge. After making up his mind, he quickly turned into a stream of light and returned upstairs. With a smile on his face, he looked around at the crowd and said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, the heaven and earth great array is indeed broken. We can successfully return to the celestial world." Hearing that, the group of people upstairs immediately cheered. But at this moment, someone suddenly asked, "Then what about immortal Lord Ji-Wu?" This was like a basin of cold water splashing on everyone's head. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. Almost everyone present had participated in the pursuit of Ji-Wu. Rakshasa immediately waved his hand and laughed in a hoarse voice. "Everyone, don't panic. I already have a countermeasure. Ji-Wu is not the only immortal lord in the celestial world. As long as we are united, I believe any immortal lord will be willing to accept us with such a huge force. By then, why would we need to be afraid of Ji-Wu?" The person who asked the question nodded slightly. "That's right. As long as we are united, Ji-Wu will not be able to do anything to us." Everyone looked at each other and nodded silently. They felt that what he said made sense. Everyone. Rakshasa waved his arm and said, "There's no time to lose. Everyone, quickly pack what you can and inform those who need to be informed. In half a day, we will return to the celestial world together." "Yes." Everyone responded excitedly. On the top of the mountain, Yu Qianqiu, who had come back to his senses, looked around in a daze. Then, he checked the condition of his body. He was shocked when he saw it. Inside his dantian, 8 more nascent souls appeared silently. A total of 10 nascent souls with the same appearance sat cross-legged in a circle. All 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls appeared. Isn't this the peak of the soul formation final stage? Could it be that my cultivation directly broke through to the peak of the soul formation final stage? Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He carefully checked the condition of his body again. In the end, he couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. He found that his cultivation had indeed broken through to the peak of the soul formation final stage. He was only one step away from becoming a celestial expert, feeling the surging power in his body that he had never felt before. Yu Qianqiu frowned and fell into deep thought. He felt that it was a bit strange. Why didn't he use a single spirit stone to break through? Apart from absorbing the purple flames, he didn't do anything else. Could it be that the purple flames played a role? That's right, it must be the powerful power contained in the purple flames. His guess was right. The purple flames were the symbol of the matured origin energy of heaven and earth. The powerful power contained in it was not something that spirit stones could compare to. After he absorbed the purple flames, the boundless power immediately felt restricted. Thus, the purple flames changed his cultivation to suit it. In the end, it gave him a huge advantage. It was a pity that he didn't know how to use it. Otherwise, he could use the power of the purple flames to forge an immortal body and become a celestial expert. He missed an opportunity for nothing. Sometimes, gains and losses were determined by fate. He had already taken a huge advantage. If he was too greedy, he might end up empty-handed. Ha! At this moment, Yu Qianqiu was laughing wildly with excitement. This trip was too worth it. Not only did he obtain the purple flames, but he also increased his cultivation to the peak of the soul formation final stage. The hardships he suffered before were too worth it. Fortunately, he gritted his teeth and persevered without giving up. Otherwise, he would definitely regret it to death. Halfway through his wild laughter, his smile suddenly froze. He suddenly looked into the distance. He thought of a big problem. Once the heaven and earth great formation of heaven and earth was broken, wouldn't all the experts from the netherworld and immortal realms who were trapped inside be freed? Once they flooded the human world, who could stop them? Damn it! The human world is my territory. No one is allowed to mess around. If you anger me, I'll use you to test the power of the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu's face flashed with ferocity. He immediately disappeared from where he was standing. Once he returned to Obedient Island, Yu Qianqiu quietly stood beside the 1,000-mile lake. He held a shining white mirror in his hand. It was as if he was holding up a bright moon. The scene that appeared in the mirror was the scene at the entrance of the 9 Netherworld cave in the Yin Wind Valley. Chapter 798. Lady Mu stood quietly behind him. She could feel that her master's mental state was very good this time. He no longer had the fatigue of being tortured. His brows, in particular, seemed to be full of confidence. However, she could also see the seriousness in his eyes. It seemed that something big was about to happen. She had seen Bai Changchun use the mirror in Yu Qianqiu's hand. In fact, she wanted to see what could be seen in the mirror, but without Yu Qianqiu's permission, she didn't dare to peep. Otherwise, once she violated the taboo, the consequences were not something she could bear. Yu Qianqiu didn't smile cheekily anymore. She also stood behind silently with her head down. The mirror in Yu Qianqiu's hand was called the Heaven's Eye Mirror. It meant that it was the eye of the heavens. It could watch everything quietly. It was a treasure passed down from generation to generation among the torture envoys. It was specially used to control the demon realm. The original owner of this treasure was the 1,000 Swords Demon Monarch. In fact, the entire monster ghost realm was just another formation set up by the 1,000 Swords Demon Monarch. This secret was only known to the torture envoys of the monster ghost realm, and it was of great importance. This formation had a very illustrious name. It was called the Demon Spirit Execution Formation. This formation was different from the Heaven and Earth Universe Formation, which was purely a defensive formation. It was an extremely powerful killing formation. Once it was activated, almost everyone who broke into it would die. The reason why the Demon Lord of 1,000 Swords chose this location to set up this killing formation was very simple. He wanted to leave a backup plan just in case he couldn't do it himself. He also didn't want the Demon Lord of the Demon Realm, the Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Realm, and the Underworld Emperor of the Underworld to recklessly break into the human world. The torture envoys of the demon realm were the ones who carried out the punishment on his behalf. This was also the real origin of the name of the torture envoys. However, the area covered by the demon spirit punishing formation was limited. After including the entrances to the demon realm and the underworld, it couldn't unify the entrances to the immortal realm. Therefore, the demon spirit punishing formation set up an extremely powerful soul transformation smoke at the entrance to the immortal realm. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai couldn't come to the human world even if he wanted to. Unless he wanted to die, the only way was to use the underworld realm and come out from the underworld cave. The myriad swords fiend lord's intentions were obvious. This face spirit slaughtering formation was mainly meant to deal with the big shots of the immortal, nether, and demon realms. He seemed to want to tell the three of them that even if he died, he would lock them up and not let them do whatever they wanted. The heaven's eye mirror in Yu Qianzhou's hand was the eye of this formation, and also the key to activating the demonic spirit punishing formation. Once the killing formation was activated, it would instantly bathe the entire demon ghost region in blood and refine the countless demon ghosts within the demon ghost region. This was the peerless name of the demon ghost celestial eradication formation. The more demonic ghosts they refined, the more powerful the killing formation would be. This was also the main reason why the torturing commissioners kept demonic ghosts and never let them out of the domain of demons and ghosts. Once the demonic monarch of the devil realm, the immortal emperor of the immortal realm, and the emperor of the underworld barged into this place, the torture commissioner would activate the killing formation. Even if the three of them survived, they wouldn't have a good ending. Although this formation was ferocious, it also had a flaw. It was too powerful, and if they weren't careful, they could implicate the entire human realm, turning it into a real ghost realm. Therefore, whenever there were too many demon ghosts in the domain of demons and ghosts, the torture commissioners would find an excuse to cleanse some of them. Through the heaven's eye mirror, Yu Qianzhou silently watched the entrance of the Jiu Yu Hell Cavern. He didn't want to activate the demonic spirit punishing formation, but to see if the people from the netherworld and immortal realm would go back through the Jiu Yu Hell Cavern. The immortal ascension plateau was sealed by the soul-dispelling smoke, so if the people from the immortal realm wanted to go back, they would have to go through the netherworld cavern. According to his calculations, there was no need for these two groups of people to stay in the human realm. The human realm's environment wasn't suitable for immortal cultivators and meditation cultivators. But, if there really was someone who refused to leave, he would do anything to make up for the destruction of the heaven and earth Qinkuan formation. Logically speaking, they would definitely go back, but Yu Qianzhou was worried about Rakshasa and the others in the immortal realm. They had offended Ji Wu, so it was possible that they wouldn't dare to return to the immortal realm and would stay in the human realm. If that was the case, things would be troublesome. Although he had absorbed the purple fire and his cultivation level had reached the peak of the soul formation final stage, he still didn't have the confidence to deal with so many immortal cultivators. There were only two ways to completely solve this problem. One was to find Bai Changchun and deal with them, the other was to lure them into the domain of demons and ghosts and then activate the demonic spirit punishing formation to kill them in one fell swoop. As for which method to use, he hadn't decided yet. He didn't want to use either method. He could only hope that these people would go back obediently and not force him to make a choice. The vast domain of demons and ghosts that was shrouded in dark clouds had existed silently for countless years. At this time, there were nearly 1,000 people standing in the sky above the domain of demons and ghosts. They were all meditation cultivators who had escaped from the Eastern Holy Land. Everyone stared in bewilderment at the surging dark clouds in front of them. The auras of demons and ghosts were mixed together. They remembered that when they first came out of the netherworld, there were no such boundless dark clouds here. How did it become like this now? Could it be that something had happened? The netherworld saintess, who had witnessed all this, had closed her eyes and been silent for a long time. Almost all the meditation cultivators' gazes were focused on her, waiting for her instructions. Although her experience was shallow and her cultivation level wasn't that great, everyone believed her words without a doubt. The long wait made everyone look up at the blazing sun in the sky from time to time. All of them seemed a bit uncomfortable. They weren't used to being exposed to the sun. It could even be said that they hated the sun. At this time, the netherworld saintess finally opened her eyes slowly. Her eyes were as deep as autumn water, and she quietly stared at the depths of the domain of demons and ghosts. She lightly said, "We just need to go back to our netherworld. Remember, don't get into conflict with anyone, lest we provoke someone we can't afford to provoke. Let's go. The 4 people behind her quickly turned around and conveyed her instructions. The group of meditation cultivators obeyed and instantly swarmed toward the domain of demons and ghosts. As soon as the group of meditation cultivators with such powerful cultivations entered the domain of demons and ghosts, the powerful aura they emitted immediately deterred the demonic spirits below and made them all tremble with fear. Wherever they went, the eerie and terrifying wails and howls of ghosts immediately stopped, and everything became quiet. The chilly Wind Valley's great formation was easily penetrated by them, and they saw the way back to the netherworld that they had been dreaming about, the netherworld cave. As the netherworld saintess landed on the cliff opposite the netherworld cave, although the others were anxious to return, they didn't dare to trespass. They all landed behind her and waited for her next instructions. They firmly believed that as long as they followed the saintess's instructions, they would definitely be able to return to the netherworld safely. Yuji and the others had long been alarmed, but they didn't dare to approach them. They stood far away and looked at this group of people with bewilderment and uncertainty. From the majestic death chi around them, it could be seen that they were obviously the same kind as them, but the powerful aura they emitted was not something they could compare with at all. Yuji and the others couldn't imagine where these people came from. The netherworld saintess's gaze fell on Yuji. Her deep and peaceful eyes stared at her for a long time, and then she waved to the people behind her and said, "You can go back first." As soon as her words came out, it immediately caused a commotion. The 4 people behind her who were protecting her were shocked. One of them immediately cupped his hands and said, "Saintess, don't you want to go back to the netherworld? You misunderstood me. You can go first, and I will come back later," the netherworld saintess said lightly. The 4 people were relieved and made a gesture to the nearly 1,000 people behind them to go back. The group of meditation cultivators immediately became excited, but in front of the saintess, they still maintained their order and didn't appear crowded. One after another, they turned into flowing lights and shot into the 9th netherworld cave. However, the saintess's 4 guards didn't leave, and they still surrounded and protected her. In the end, only the 5 of them were left on the cliff. The netherworld saintess suddenly waved at Yuji and said, "Come here." Yuji was shocked, but she could tell from their conversation just now that these people were from the netherworld, and she couldn't afford to offend them at all. She gritted her teeth and was about to go forward, but the group of ghost generals behind her cried out in alarm, "Madam, you can't." Yuji turned around and forced a smile, saying, "It's okay. Don't worry." Then she teleported in front of the netherworld saintess and looked at the 4 men behind her who were staring at her with cold expressions. She quickly looked away and didn't dare to look at them. She bowed and said, "Senior, why did you summon me?" The netherworld saintess looked at her silently for a while, and suddenly took out a small black token and handed it over, saying, "If you encounter any trouble in the netherworld in the future, this might be able to help you a little." Yuji was startled, but she still took it and bowed respectfully, saying, "Thank you, senior." But in her heart, she was puzzled. "I won't have the chance to go to the netherworld in my life, so why would I encounter any trouble in the netherworld?" Not to mention her, even the 4 people behind the netherworld saintess were a little surprised. They looked at each other and didn't know why the saintess would favor this small ghost cultivator in the mortal world. The netherworld saintess didn't say much, and just suddenly raised her head and looked in the direction of Obedient Island. And on Obedient Island, Yu Qianqiu was also looking at her through the Heaven Eye mirror. Their gazes met unexpectedly in the mirror, and it seemed like they were looking at each other. Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled, and he muttered in his heart, "This woman is so strange, could it be that she knows I'm looking at her?" While he was puzzled, the netherworld saintess and the other 4 had already turned into flowing lights and flashed into the 9th netherworld cave. The vast East Sea waves surged, and Patriarch Nan Ming stood on the red dragon that was flapping its wings in the air. Behind him were the surviving disciples of Xian Xian Island, and Xian Xian Island had long disappeared in the turbulent sea. Patriarch Nan Ming, who was originally sad, was now staring at the East Sacred Land with his mouth agape. The group of disciples behind him were also stunned. The East sacred land that had been shrouded by the white fog for countless years. The white fog that never dissipated disappeared after a great change, and the mysterious veil of the East sacred land was finally lifted. What terrified him the most was that he actually saw a group of people flying out of the East sacred land at high speed. Could it be that the East sacred land has already? An unimaginable thought appeared in Patriarch Nanming's mind. However, at this moment, another group of densely packed flowing lights flew over from the East sacred land and quickly flew over their heads. There were also flowing lights that appeared in the sky. After that person silently sized them up for a while, he turned into a flowing light and flew away. Chapter 799. To the cultivators of the mortal world, the Eastern Holy Land was called a holy land because it was forever shrouded in a mysterious veil. No one had ever hoped to easily see its true face. But today, everything was clearly presented before everyone's eyes. The people of Xian Island were suddenly at a loss and felt that it was unreal. This was a matter of great importance. Forefather Nanming gritted his teeth and decided to confirm it himself. He immediately dashed away from the red dragon's back and flew directly to the Eastern Holy Land. As he approached, he subconsciously slowed down, but the resistance he felt in the past had completely disappeared. Although Forefather Nanming had guessed this possibility, he still couldn't help but be shocked. He landed lightly on a towering reef by the sea. Waves crashed against the shore, and the sea breeze blew. Forefather Nanming looked around and cast his gaze towards the depths of this continent. In the distance, there were undulating mountain ranges, lush forests, and birds flying freely in the sky. On the outside, it looked no different from the other continents in the mortal world. He wanted to take a closer look, but subconsciously, he was still afraid of this holy land. Since he had confirmed that the seal on the Eastern Holy Land had been completely opened, there was no need to take any more risks. Forefather Nanming quickly flew back to the disciples and said with a serious expression, "The world has changed, and the Eastern Holy Land has been opened. It is not advisable to stay here for long. Go to the southern sea purple bamboo forest to rest for the time being. I will go inform Mr. Nongju first." "Yes." The disciples replied in unison. The red dragon flapped its wings and carried Forefather Nanming away, quickly disappearing into the distant horizon. Thousands of immortal cultivators flew across the sky, and the first place they entered was the airspace of the Huaxia cultivation world. To mortals in the mortal world, with their eyesight, not many could see the immortals flying in the sky. However, to the cultivators below, they might not have noticed if there were few of them, but how could they not notice when so many of them appeared at the same time? The people of the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance thought it was another surprise attack from the other countries and immediately sent people to stop them. However, they realized that by the time they took to the sky, the immortals had already flown far away. Their speed was so fast that they could only look at them in the dust. The majestic aura that remained in the air made everyone tremble. They felt a powerful aura that they had never felt before, a powerful aura that made them tremble. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the speck of light that quickly disappeared into the distance. The colorful mist of the dense fog forest was still drifting slowly. 100,000 years had passed, but it had not weakened or faded in the slightest. It was still as beautiful and enchanting as ever. But today, those wanderers who had left home 100,000 years ago had finally returned. A group of flowing lights landed on the ground and revealed themselves. Rakshasa led thousands of immortal cultivators to descend on the wasteland at the periphery of the mist forest. Seeing the magnificent seven-colored mist in front of them, all of them turned pale with fright. Many of them exclaimed, "Soul formation smoke." Everyone was dumbfounded. This result was far beyond their expectations. Never in their wildest dreams would they have encountered such a thing. The excitement of returning to the immortal world instantly vanished, and his heart turned cold. Luo Sha's expression also changed drastically. After gnashing his teeth, He roared angrily in a hoarse voice, "Who did it? Who did this?" Behind the anger was fear and dread. If everyone could not return to the immortal world, the consequences would be terrible. Once Ji Wu's injuries were healed, they would be like lambs trapped in a cage, waiting to be slaughtered. No one could answer his question. Everyone else also wanted to know who could actually do such a wicked thing. They had finally escaped the heaven and earth universe formation. Just as they were about to return home, they suddenly realized that there was no way back. How could they endure this? Anger, despair, sorrow, and not knowing whether to laugh or cry filled everyone's faces. After taking a deep breath, Luo Sha forcibly suppressed his emotions that were about to explode. He knew that it was useless to be anxious at this time. Finding a way to solve the problem was the key. He slowly turned around and swept his gaze across everyone. With just us, it is impossible to overcome this hurdle of the soul formation smoke. Everyone, please come up with an idea. Let's see if there is any other way. Many people shook their heads in despair. After everyone was silent for a long time, someone suddenly sighed. I wonder if those people from the netherworld realm are as unlucky as us. I wonder what the situation at the 9th netherworld cave is. Could it have also been blocked by someone with the soul formation smoke? Hearing this, someone immediately did not know whether to laugh or cry. You still have the time to worry about them. So what if the 9th netherworld cave is not blocked? Do you still think that the netherworld realm will lend us a way back to the immortal world? Everyone sighed. Everyone knew that the netherworld emperor and the immortal emperor did not get along. From top to bottom, the relationship between the immortal world and the netherworld was naturally not much better. Luo Sha's eyes flickered, and he slowly said in a hoarse voice, "The 9th netherworld cave is our last hope. Without enough people, the netherworld realm will definitely stop us from passing through. However, we have thousands of immortal cultivators here. Even the netherworld emperor will not rashly punish us. If he really does that, I'm afraid that even the immortal emperor will not be able to withstand the pressure. Unless the netherworld wants to start a war with the immortal world. Besides, what can we do if we don't try? It's better than staying here and waiting for Ji Wu to kill us." His words were actually a bit against his will. Others might not know, but he had followed Immortal Lord Night Owl for many years and knew a lot about the upper echelons of the immortal world and the netherworld realm. For people like the immortal emperor and the netherworld emperor, even if tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of immortal cultivators died, they might not even bat an eye, let alone thousands of immortal cultivators. To them, the immortal cultivators below them were no different from ants. Unless it was related to their own interests, they would only use the word righteousness when they attacked. To Luo Sha, he was the mastermind behind the sneak attack on Ji Wu. Ji Wu might let anyone go, but not him. Thus, he had to find a way to leave and return to the immortal world as soon as possible to find a life-saving backer. The reason why he pulled everyone together was just as he said. With a large group of people, it would be easier to find a backer when they returned to the immortal world. Moreover, they would have a greater chance of passing through the netherworld. Hearing his words, everyone nodded in agreement. Although some people knew about Luo Sha's little scheme, they were not stupid. They would not express their objections at this time if they could not win. In the end, under Luo Sha's instigation, a large group of people headed towards the 9th netherworld cave full of hope. When they hurriedly rushed to the periphery of the demon domain, they were also shocked by the demon domain that was densely covered with dark clouds, just like the group of people from the underworld. This damn thing did not exist in the past at all. What happened? However, compared to the others, Luo Sha had no way out. He immediately risked his life for everyone to see. He barged into the Devil Ghost region alone to find a way out. When he came back, he told everyone that he was fine. Then, he dragged a group of people to accompany him. Yu Ji and the others in Chilly Wind Valley did not know what was going on today. They watched helplessly as a group of people with frighteningly high cultivation broke into the 9th netherworld cave. The group of ghost cultivators could not help but be secretly shocked. It turned out that there were so many experts in the human world outside. It seemed that staying in the devil ghost region was not a bad thing. Not long after Luo Sha and the others entered the 9th netherworld cave, Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared on the cliff opposite the 9th netherworld cave. Although his attire was rather different, greatly reducing his image, his expression was unprecedentedly solemn. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave. The group hurried over to greet him. Yu Qianqiu also felt that his attire was inappropriate from their gazes. Now that he had obtained the purple flames, he should not be wearing this to embarrass himself. He had been too busy and had forgotten about it. He turned back and looked at Yu Ji with a smile. He asked casually, "What did that woman give you? Are you very familiar with the people from the netherworld?" Yu Ji was shocked. She did not expect Yu Qianqiu to know about this. In reality, she did not think much of it. She quickly took out the small black tablet and presented it with both hands. She said fearfully, "Yu Ji has never seen her before. I don't know why she would give something to Yu Ji." Yu Qianqiu turned the small tablet over and looked at it. It seemed to be made of wood, but he had never seen this kind of wood before. It was very hard. He secretly used his hidden force to hold it, but it was not damaged at all. The pattern on the tablet was very simple. One side was a cloud pattern, and the other side was engraved with a mountain. There were 6 peaks on the mountain, and the outer 5 peaks surrounded the highest peak in the middle. There seemed to be a grand palace on the middle peak. After looking at it for a while, he could not see anything. He could not help but frown and ask, "What did she say to you?" "Nothing much. She only said that if I encounter any trouble in the netherworld in the future, this tablet might be of some help," Yu Ji replied honestly. In her heart, she was very worried that Yu Qianqiu would misunderstand that she had some connection with the netherworld. Yu Qianqiu's brows twitched slightly as he stared at Yu Ji with a flicker in his eyes. The status of the underworld's holy maiden in the underworld was not to be underestimated. Her words and actions, which were like prophets, were filled with an unfathomable mystery. Why did she give this tablet to Yu Ji? Why did she say that Yu Ji would encounter trouble in the netherworld? Could it be that she had foreseen that Yu Ji would go to the netherworld in the future? "Do you know who gave you this tablet?" Yu Qianqiu asked with a smile. Yu Ji really does not know. Yu Ji's words were filled with more fear. She was a little confused. Yu Qianqiu explained with a smile, "She is the saintess of the underworld, second only to the emperor of the netherworld. She has the noblest status in the netherworld, except for the emperor of the underworld. You are very lucky to be favored by her." "Ah!" Yu Ji was shocked. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with her eyes wide open and tongue-tied. Disbelief was written all over her face. She could not understand why such a noble person would take the initiative to give something to her. At the same time, she felt that Yu Qianqiu was even more mysterious. He even knew such a noble person from the netherworld. The group of ghost generals behind her were also sizing each other up in shock. Yu Qianqiu smiled and grabbed Yu Ji's hand. He stuffed the tablet into her hand and said with a smile, "Since the saintess of the underworld gave it to you, you should take good care of it. Maybe one day, as she said, this thing will be of help to you." Chapter 800. Hearing his words, Yu Ji became even more terrified and didn't dare to keep it. She wanted to say something like offering it to her teacher, but Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said indifferently, "Keep it. Don't lose it." As he spoke, the 9th netherworld cave suddenly changed again, and a chilly wind blew wildly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed, and he shot into the 9th netherworld cave. He flew quickly along the passageway, holding a ball of purple fire in each of his palms as a precaution. With his current cultivation and immunity to the chilly wind and evil spirit in the netherworld cave, his journey was almost unimpeded, and he directly rushed to the end of the netherworld cave. After entering the netherworld fire sea, he quickly looked around, and finally floated in front of the netherworld gate. Looking at the seamlessly closed ghost gate, he withdrew the purple fire in his palms into his body. He checked along the way and didn't see anyone. Obviously, the intruders had all entered this gate. This was what he hoped to see. After sending away the group of pests, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. As for whether there were any survivors in the human world outside, it was no longer important. Although a group of them was terrifying, he was confident that he could deal with a few clowns with the ferocity of the purple fire. Today, he had already regarded the human world as his own territory, and he wouldn't allow outsiders to trample on it. With his cultivation and means at this level, his strong self-confidence had already made him somewhat similar to Bai Changchun's thoughts. He had unknowingly carried a heavy burden on his shoulders, and subconsciously felt that he had the responsibility to maintain the peace of the human world. It was also from this day onwards that the change in his cultivation and thinking allowed him to truly transform into a real devil ghost region torturer. The new generation of devil ghost region torturer finally began to look down on the world. This was Bai Changchun's unique choice, and reality proved that he didn't choose the wrong person. After returning to Shuntian Island, Yu Qianzhou's body flashed with a purple light, and his fur clothes instantly turned into ashes. This scene made Lady Mu tremble with fear. The torturer really hid his strength well. Occasionally, he would show his unparalleled strength with every move he made, and it wasn't something a little demon like her could covet. Yu Qianzhou swung his braids, and with a swish, the braids scattered and became strands of long hair. He didn't care that he was completely naked in front of Lady Mu. He took out a yellow pill, rubbed it into powder, mixed it with water, and smeared it all over his body. After a layer of paste was formed, he jumped into the 1,000-mile lake to wash himself. When he came out of the water again, he had returned to his original self. Miss Mu hurriedly went over to help him adjust his clothes and tie up his hair. Then, she watched as Yu Qianzhou walked steadily towards the big house in the center of the island. Lady Mu suddenly felt as if she was looking at her boss with that kind of confidence and calmness. Yu Qianzhou sat cross-legged inside the large room. He spread out his palms, each emitting a purple flame. After silently admiring it for a while, a ball of black fire and a ball of green fire appeared. The three brightly colored flames burned and danced. What he wanted to do the most at the moment was to fuse the three flames into the true samadhi fire, which even immortal emperors were afraid of, and he was ready to try it. Looking around, he couldn't help but sigh. It was on this obedient island that he first heard Healy talk about the true samadhi fire. Now, things were the same, but people were different. He didn't think that he would one day collect all three types of true samadhi fire, and he didn't think that he would become the master of the demon domain. After sighing, he took a deep breath and withdrew the flames into his body. Just as he was about to close his eyes to meditate, he felt a fluctuation from the communication array outside. After waiting for a while, Lady Mu quickly walked in. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, "What's the matter?" Lady Mu bowed and said, "It's Mr. Nongzhu from the Purple Bamboo Forest in the South Sea. He said that he has an important matter to discuss with you." Important matter? What important matter could he have? Yu Qianzhou muttered to himself and suddenly disappeared from the big house. When he appeared in the depths of the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea, he suddenly heard someone shouting in the sky, "Disciples of Xian Island greet Senior Nongzhu." Yu Qianzhou raised his head and looked through the gaps in the bamboo leaves. He saw hundreds of people in the air. After that, he heard a light sound in the air. It was probably the opening of the defensive formation. The hundreds of people flew in orderly. Why did such a large group of Xian Island disciples come here? Could it be because of the matter in the Eastern Holy Land? Yu Qianqiu walked towards the blessed land of bamboo with a stomach full of doubts. He had only taken a few steps when he heard a large group of people greeting Nongzhu. Then, he heard ancestor Nanming yell at the top of his voice, "Find a corner and stay there. Don't damage the bamboos of the purple bamboo forest." The group of people obeyed and scattered in all directions to find a place to stay. Yu Qianqiu also walked out slowly with his hands behind his back. He immediately saw Nongzhu and ancestor Nanming who were whispering together in the courtyard. Both of their expressions were very solemn. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "Seniors, how have you been?" The two of them tilted their heads and looked at each other in surprise. Nongzhu was still fine, but ancestor Nanming was stunned and said, "Why are you here so quickly?" Yu Qianqiu walked over with a smile and didn't explain. The more he explained, the more troublesome it would be. He asked Nongzhu, "What's the important matter that made you look for me in such a hurry?" Nongzhu's expression turned serious and looked at ancestor Nanming, indicating for him to speak. The latter nodded and said solemnly, "The great formation that sealed the eastern Holy Land has completely disappeared. Xian Island has also suffered a disaster and collapsed in the sea. The experts from the immortal realm and netherworld have already come out. I'm afraid the human world is going to be in chaos. Your demon region will be the first to bear the brunt. You have to plan ahead." Xian Island was destroyed. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and immediately decided to keep the secret that he was the one who broke the heaven and earth formation. Nongzhu nodded and continued, "Since the eastern Holy Land has been completely opened, how is your master? Did he return to the demon region?" Yu Qianqiu laughed and waved his hand disapprovingly, "I already know about this. You don't have to worry. The human world will not be in chaos. Those people have already left the human world." The two of them looked at each other and Nongzhu asked, "Are you sure?" "Of course I know. My master has already returned, and his cultivation has increased tremendously. He has now gone to the netherworld." Yu Qianqiu explained ambiguously. He felt that there was no need to tell them everything about the immortal realm and netherworld. Knowing too much might not be a good thing for them. It was better to let them continue living in their own world. "Your master is fine?" Nongzhu asked in surprise. Yu Qianqiu shrugged and said, "What can happen to him? Don't you have confidence in him?" That's good, that's good." Nongzhu heaved a sigh of relief and praised, "Old Bai is indeed Old Bai. He can actually enter the netherworld. Amazing. No wonder he is the #1 expert in the human world." Grandmaster Nanming also shook his head with admiration. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said nothing. What made them sigh was that Bai Changchun's world was getting further and further away from them. If he told them the truth, it would probably scare them. Looking around, he was slightly stunned and said, "Where are they? Why don't I see any of them?" He was naturally referring to Furong and the other women. "Zi has brought them to the sea." Nongzhu snorted and looked at him coldly. She did not hesitate to fall out with him. She sneered and said, "Do you think my purple bamboo forest is your backyard? I'm warning you, if you dare to bring other women here, I will kill them all." I just remembered that I have something urgent to do. Seniors, farewell." "Stop!" Nongzhu shouted angrily. However, Yu Qianqiu disappeared in an instant, leaving behind Nongzhu and old ancestor Nanming with horrified expressions. They did not see how Yu Qianqiu had left. The war in Huaxia finally ended. With the end of the Li dynasty, the actual control of the whole Huaxia was in Shi Wenguang's hands. The end of the war allowed the people to see the light of hope again. The incense burning in the mountain god temple to pray for peace was flourishing again. Yu Qianqiu stood under a big tree on the platform halfway up the mountain and looked at the mountain god temple with smoke rising from it. Gu Qingyun and Hong Qi, who had finished reporting the recent situation, looked at him in awe. Now, the news that Yu Qianqiu was the torture master of the demon ghost region had already spread throughout the cultivation world. Especially in the Battle of Lingfang Valley, where he killed 4 experts in the late divine transformation realm, his prestige was pushed to the peak. It was like he was the #1 expert in the world, especially in the cultivation world of Huaxia. Yu Qianqiu, who had been the idol of the grassroots disciples of various sects, had now climbed to the peak of the cultivation world and received the admiration of the people in the world, dazzling those grassroots disciples even more. After all, the grassroots disciples occupied the majority of the sections. As the representative of the grassroots disciples, Yu Qianqiu had undoubtedly realized the ideal in everyone's hearts. Therefore, the whole cultivation world of Huaxia set off a craze of crazy worship for him. With Yu Qianqiu's current prestige, the sects did not dare to suppress this craze in their sects anymore. For a time, the new torture master of the demon ghost region was almost a legend by word of mouth. It's time for you to expand your power. Go out of the cultivation world of Huaxia and unite the rogue cultivators in the world. Yu Qianqiu turned to face the two and said lightly, be careful to keep a low profile. Don't make the countries desperate and fight back. You can secretly negotiate with the World Chamber of Commerce about this. Just tell them that I said it, and they will naturally cooperate. Yes, the two replied in unison. Hong Qi then cupped his hands with a fiery gaze and said, Master, the Shi family is about to ascend the throne of Huaxia in a few days. I, Shi Shaotian, would like to invite you. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, from today onwards, I won't directly intervene in the affairs of the secular world. You are also not allowed to interfere in the affairs of the secular world of Huaxia. At the same time, send people to warn the various sects in Huaxia that they are not allowed to intervene, or else they will have to bear the consequences. Let the secular world solve its own affairs, and the cultivation world must gradually break away from the secular world. This is my ultimate goal. You just need to pay attention in secret. Call back all the people protecting Shi Wenguang and pass on my words to Shi Wenguang. Let him properly govern this suffering country and let the people of the world recuperate and live a good life. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.